Hi, Michael.
Hi, how's it going, Jenny?
So good. Having my evening coffee. Thank you so much for with me at 9:30 at night to have this interview.
Absolutely. We're glad to be here. This has been I'm anticipating it for a while, so I'm looking forward to talking to somebody on this issue.
Me too. Me too.
I am. Yeah, yeah. And I love
So
your content, by the way, too, because it totally drew me to the kinds of conversations that you were thinking, the things that the connections that you were making were so interesting to me that it drew me to your page, and it drew me to want to engage with your content and want to engage with you, because I felt like, and that's what I'm glad to be here. Really glad to be here, because I feel like I'm actually able to, actualize on a goal to sort of make community within a space that affects me profoundly and in multiple ways.
thank you so much for saying that. It means a lot to me because it's hard to be vulnerable on such sort of I don't want to say a faceless space, but a space that has millions of faces, and so it's hard to be vulnerable and share. And as I've been, creating content, it's like you said, it's profoundly affecting me because it's from my own experience. I talk about these things. So sorry. I talk about these things. That's my ringtone. I know it's horrible. Amazon delivery is calling me. I talk about these, concepts and these things and try to make sense of them and to, be introspective and to get to know myself. And, as you and I have talked about, being our own special interests and what that means for our mental health. And so this is some of the things that I want to talk about today with you. But everyone, I'd like to introduce you to Michael Froberg. He is an autistic senior software engineer, and he can be found on TikTok, KAEL BERG. And, as he said, building a community in this space, in this virtual world during a pandemic where we sort of have had to stay separate and, learn new ways to build. It's been really an honor to get to know you as I have, and I'm looking forward, to more conversations.
Certainly. Well, to your point, I think, about building community, I think that's something that I felt growing up that was lacking, what was really any understanding of what I was going through. I had to learn, and I still haven't gotten a formal even diagnosis of autism although I have self-diagnosed by virtue of the fact that my daughter, who's been diagnosed as having autism herself, ASD, that I had the same symptoms. Like she was exhibiting the same symptoms that I've had my whole life, and I've been saying to people that I've had my whole life. So that kind of validated it as far as I needed it for it to go for me. And I mean, I could go further, but and I'm interested in going further to see what that would look like. But I don't feel like I'm doing it to validate myself. I already know what I am. I don't need really. If I can get it for not the full cost of whatever it was like seemingly appears to be associated with it, regardless of what I do, it's still kind of out of the, for me to spend $4,000 for something that's not gonna do anything other than get me something that on paper would help me get disability that I can't ever get. And I'm not quite sure that it's worth the effort, other than that what I have done is I advocated on behalf of myself at software companies and some other companies and stuff that I work with on behalf of for interview advocacy. So that the idea that within interviews we need to, and even my own last interview itself, to be transparent, was conducted under guidelines that basically I set for the accommodability, accommodations for that particular interview, and it worked out in a way that enabled me to be able to do what it was that I set out to do without feeling like the either give them more time and or give them access to materials that otherwise would be considered on the spot. Like you need to there's a lot of sort of on the spot with my job where they want you to go demonstrate like the test kind of thing, like, and that's not really helpful for people who think like the way I do, or at least the way I do. It kind of excludes them and people who think that way from getting work. So I want like a lot of tangents here, but ultimately that was.
No, I love tangents. I think that's one of the most amazing things about autistic brains is that they work sort of in so many directions, and tangents come naturally to us because we're thinking so many things. So I legitimately believe that authentic workplaces are going to create the best work. Like, we do our best when we feel most like ourselves. And when workplace accommodations are put in place for autistics, we're actually going to do a job that is unique and proprietary, and in a way that, I think often there's this misunderstanding of how productive we can be, or that we need to be given jobs that, are just kind of crossing off a line. In reality, like, we have individual brilliances, and we come up with solutions that are completely proprietary because our brains work differently. And when we can advocate for ourselves, like you said, and to have these accommodations put in place, we will have more space to be our authentic selves. So I think it's incredible that you found a way to implement these accommodations, to advocate for yourself, to advocate for your daughter. I also think that there's a lot of, conflict with self-diagnoses. And it's just as valid, because one, it costs a lot of money to get a diagnosis. As you said, it costs money to get something that says we are what we are. Yeah. And, up until sort of recently, they sort of just said autism was for kids. And so what happens to autistic adults, right? We don't disappear. It doesn't go away, and so
different diagnoses. For instance, when I was coming up, it was called Asperger's disorder for what I would have been diagnosed as when I was coming up. And then now they use ASD, which is, I guess, it seems like it means everything and nothing at the same time, which is really kind of crazy to me. Because
right, it's so vague. They're like, we have these 3 criteria. Do you fall into it? Okay. It's a basket. It catches it all. I'm like, well, okay. No, I got my diagnosis at, I was 29, and it took me 3 years of the process and having health insurance and not having health insurance. And then I moved to Los Angeles, and I just so happened to have healthcare that had an adult autism specialist and who focuses on women, just perfect place, perfect time. But I realized while I was looking before I moved here, there were doctors who had no experience with adults with autism. And so I think it's sort of still this vague understanding of, even the people who are studying it, the doctors studying it, it's still desultory. It's not all connected. It doesn't overlap. Even if the DSM says this and that and this, it's not all connected.
No, I mean, I can speak to that even within the fact that what I am diagnosed as is ADHD, bipolar disorder, OCD, and then I guess forms of anxiety, I guess. So, but if you were to look at that, and that was when they only thought that this was coming from things that sparked about me being 25 or something years old with the bipolar. So before that, I had been spazzing since I was a kid. I had been told that I was, I felt like I know it's called stimming now, but that is 100% what I was doing. Every time I thought people weren't watching me. And that was a big thing. It was I understood it as if people saw what you were doing, they would think you're crazy. And if you let them see that, they have power over you. And they have power over you. So I internalize this kind of trauma around hiding things that I think, that has anything to do with all the things. But it felt like I had to withhold and hide and conceal parts of myself. Otherwise, I would be, and I think my parents helped it. They built masks for me. They put me in acting, right? So I literally was wearing a mask every day.
Yeah, I found a way to sort of put the natural skill, this innate thing we do, into practice. Yeah, I have found also that I didn't realize it was stimming either. And I've always sort of flailed my hands. I pace a lot. I have a hard time just sitting still in general. And, people have said sit on your hands, or, just stop touching your hair, stop touching your face. And I realized for me, it's a way for me to maintain, to stay in the space. I'm not meaning to be distracting. There's just so much going on inside of me that I need to find a way to release that energy. Or I'm struggling to pay attention. If I'm struggling to keep my body still, then I'm struggling to pay attention. If I can keep my body in motion, I can concentrate.
Yeah, I've read stories about or studies about that. They say that people in motion like actually learn better. And in fact, I have a foot fidget that I bought on like at an actual like foot fidget place to call Foot Fidget, so that I can keep my feet because of my restless legs.
Yeah.
It's like a almost like a tension rod kind of thing with like cables and stuff. And essentially, you can always keep your foot in like perpetual motion, so that like it's like it keeps you, you know. So like between it's like basically that. The Apple headphones I bought, the over ear ones,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like noise canceling things.
Yep.
Where it fully like makes it like total silence is how I'm able to like really focus at work for anything longer than a few minutes. Yeah, because otherwise I can't sit down and, you know, just unless it's like I'm in a hyper focused mode. But if I'm not hyper focused, then it's not, you know.
Right. I have to try and turn on the hyper focus if it's not there, and I have to take strategies or accommodations in order to turn that on. And I'm with you. I need headphones. I feel sort of it's almost incredulous to me how much better I feel when I have headphones. You know, sometimes I'm like out without them, and you know, I come home and I'm just fried. And then I'll go out with them, you know, to the grocery store or whatever, even to walk the dog. And I come home and I'm like, oh, that accommodation really does change my life.
Yeah, interesting. Before I even got a diagnosis as neurodivergent, you know, my job was as a sound man on films and TV shows in LA,
Oh,
New York. So I used to work in the industry.
cool.
And so like almost all the time, you know, I mean, I had headphones on, I'm mixing sound like to the point where I mean, for 15 years I had headphones on. And I didn't realize that I chose a job that would allow me to wear headphones because I needed a job that would let me wear headphones. Like it was like to be able to listen to things, but it's isolating sound. It was like this entire thing where I'm like pulling people's voices out of like groups of people's voices and mixing them together with other people and finding these kind of like on the fly, like really like rapid decision making things where I have to sort of decide whether or not I'm going to listen to these people over here or these people over here or send the camera guy over here to find that moment. And it's just like this producing reality, literally reality television shows for like ever. Yeah.
That is so interesting and so cool. And like now that like, you know, you look back on it, like you said, like you picked a profession that allowed you to naturally accommodate you so you could be your authentic self and do like when we're authentic again, we do our best work.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay, so I have some questions for you.
Sure, of course.
Okay, so when you think, is it a constant stream of thought or does it ever pause?
It can pause if I become aware of it.
Interesting.
You know?
What's happening then?
There are times where I can go into deep thought and like I'm like the world has gone away. And in those times, you know, I think when I come out of that, I'm like, oh, what was that? Okay. Like I just like just dance out of a daydream or something, you know, and
Yeah.
I think I become aware of it then. When I'm in it though, I think it's continuous. So it's
Okay.
either in that, well, maybe not. Maybe there's in the subconscious, it's like continuous. You know, I'm always aware of what's going on at some level. And I think there's like a top level awareness like that exists like in the frontal lobe or whatever, like, you know, for situational or like executive functioning stuff that like, you know, keeps a very low memory almost at all times.
Interesting.
So like, yeah.
Okay, so when you come out of your daydreams, do you go somewhere? Do you see different surroundings around you? Is it just like somewhere far off in your head? Like, where do you go in a daydream when you come out of it? Where were you?
Where, I mean, I just was really into my head. Like the whole thing is there. Like I'm ahead or just my imagination or whatever you want to call it. Like other realm or wherever I've gone to, you know what I mean? Like I was there and then I wasn't there, and I was like, oh snap, I just left Mordor or something, you know, like.
Big Lord of the Rings fan. Okay, so in the do you ever think in mental images?
Mental images, yeah. I mean, I think I do. I can see color. I can see, you know, I can see images. I can see things. I can see people.
So is there images in the other realm?
I think we've spoken about this briefly before in one of our, you know, I think, you know, it's like, I feel like I'm afraid to like sound schizophrenic.
No, I mean, that's the thing. Oh, I swear, Michael, autism and schizophrenia were under the same diagnosis until 1980. And autism was a symptom of schizophrenia. Autistic thinking means you don't think linearly. It means, you know, the way you think is not bound to the laws of logic and reality. And what that means is the mental images that you experience in your head cannot be measured by length, width, or height. So it's not bound to the same logic. So yeah. Aristotelian logic is linear. And that is thinking outside of Aristotelian is what divergent is. So autistic thinking is really just a different type of thought. Schizophrenia, the Greek word it comes from, schizon means to split, and phrenia means locations of thought. So schizophrenia literally translates to splitting locations of thought and can be understood as thinking more than one thought at a time, being conscious of more than one thing at a time. I have so much to say about schizophrenia and about autism, and I think that often schizophrenia is demonized by the media to justify the sort of mass asylum imprisonments that happened from the 30s to really the 90s in the United States. So I
mean, I'm about to try to decry it. I think it was more just like the fear of myself, like feeling like because I've had visions or I've seen things that aren't there, or that were
sounds like a gift to me,
or those kind of things. So it's just having that and knowing all the other diagnoses I have, and just not wanting to get caught up in a system that says schizoaffective disorder, which is what anybody will say if I use those words in certain contexts. So I'm only
I understand.
Just maintaining my own like level of how much I want to when I'm elsewhere and not a safe space. But
yeah,
I have to navigate spaces that aren't necessarily as, or maybe they are, but I'm just very mindful.
No, that honestly, perfectly put. I really understand what you're saying. And, you know, all throughout history, psychiatrists basically said mental health is all comorbid. It has potential to overlap. It doesn't always overlap. You know, it's hard to tell where one begins and one ends and if they're connected. And I really do think that mental health is a much larger overlapping spectrum. But a lot of money is made when a medicine can be prescribed for 10 different diagnoses instead of saying this is like one overlapping thing. And, you know, these are the symptoms for this individual case. It's like you have 10 diagnoses and this is what, you know, you need. And again, like, I think that in cases of, you know, medication, I want people to be their best self, their healthiest self. And, you know, sometimes that's taking medications that help us feel our best selves. And so I want, you know, to make very clear, fully transparent, you know, whatever is, you know, medicinally making someone feel better, you know, I'm a supporter of that. But I do often think that a lot of neurodivergent behaviors are pathologized, and there is often, you know, a money-based motive in a lot of these diagnoses.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Diagnosis for me was you know, I went in with like, you know, thinking that I had ADHD, and the first thing they said was bipolar 2, and then you know, I had bipolar 2, then I had bipolar 1. I kind of grew out of that, and mania or manic, but I'm always confused as to what the difference is between that and like special interest or hyper focus and being manic. And then I don't know, like when I'm like, why am I like pathologizing something that's probably just all the same thing? So I feel like all of this is one thing, whether it's ADHD, autism, bipolar 2, OCD, anxiety, are all part of the same thing. And it doesn't make any sense to me for it not to be. All that said, parts of that do include me having to deal with the pathology, you deal with the pathology of it, as in like, getting treated for ADHD with medicine for stimulation. And then now I need to have mood stabilizers, like lithium, and now I have to have another mood stabilizer like Lamictal, and another one like Abilify, and then I'm taking 11 pills a day when the only thing I came in for was like I wanted ADHD pills to help me focus.
Yeah.
Or something, because I felt like I was at the point where I needed to do that. It was getting, that was what brought me there 15 years ago when I started this journey.
Yeah. Yes.
That is where it is now.
There's just so much to it, and it's so disconnected. And I really think that people are still learning, we don't know the effects of taking 11 different medications 30 years from now, when some of these medications are 3 years old, 7 years old. Like we just don't have the longitudinal like data to really know if, what the long-term repercussions are. And I think a lot of it is guessing, and trying to find the right mixture for each person. And, that's again, going back to not everything's going to overlap in diagnoses, in comorbid diagnoses. One OCD case is not even going to overlap with another OCD case.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you think, is it one thought back to back to back, or multiple thoughts at once? Or does it vary?
I think it varies, but generally I would say it's probably fractal, like what you were saying before.
Yeah.
Whereas only specific times can I make it go serial,
Yeah.
one after another. That seems to be harder to do, because I'll just go off on a tangent, or another one. I'm talking about like fruit flies. I'm like, how the hell did I get fruit flies? Like
how did I get here? No, really though. And what you were just saying about mania and like being manic and special interests, I lived with a really good friend, for a while. We were roommates, and sometimes she'd be like, dude, you like haven't stopped reading in 3 days. Like, just checking on you. Literally haven't stopped reading in 3 days. And I nobody had really ever brought it to my attention as being like a weird thing. And I realized, like, is that me being manic? Like, am I like, is that special interest? Is that, because yes, other things are neglected, but I'm so enthralled with what I'm doing that it doesn't feel like a maladaptive, are there positive and negative symptoms to mania? Again, I think that mania is a much larger overlapping spectrum.
Yeah, I just like wish I knew but then again, it's not, it's like, this is all speculation, right? Like, I mean, honestly, like, and just since I've been alive, I've seen how we categorize this particular disorder, or neurodivergence, or even from being one thing to a neurodivergence. So I've seen some interesting changes there, and really it seems like the last 3 or 4 years, like I actually worked for a company that advocated for this, like fully, understood.org. Actually, I was one of the senior engineers, a staff engineer at understood.org. Cool. Where we were like working towards finding a way to create a world that made it easier for the people who are one in 5 who have learning and thinking differences, as they refer to. And we went to, I did like forums on neurodivergence, and it's actually really interesting. And then
you've been advocating for so long. You really have.
Yeah. And then I got on TikTok, and I was like,
oh, the world of TikTok. I mean, it really is a cool platform, brings people together. It is something else.
I gotta keep myself from like becoming addicted to it too much, because
absolutely,
you know, particularly because I'm it's like I'm using it to make a mask factory. Like I'm literally just going, okay, let me just build like a million masks, beta test different versions of myself, see the kind of reaction I get based on the types of expressions I do when I'm singing a song, whether or not I'm, you know, when I'm singing a song, people see my eyes moving around too much because I'm staring at the screen, and I don't get any voice. Like people don't like that very much. I noticed there's like 25%. Like I'm literally doing analytics on my own image.
I was just gonna say you're doing the analytics in your brain. Okay, so when you think about the numbers, do you see numbers in your head? Like,
yes, I see like the solution to the numbers in my head, and then I work backwards from there. I can see like almost like 3D models of things, and you know, when I'm truly in my element, and I'm not like, you know, then yes, like I can see the connections to things. I can see things like the whole pipeline in my head. I can see how like everything works together, from the people who, you know, from people to processes to product to everything moving through a whole system. I became
exactly, and those 3D models cannot be measured by length, width, and height.
no, they're just conceptual, but
Yeah.
they're like, but they're still like pseudo visual, you know,
where in relation to your body do they exist? Are they in your forehead? Are they above you?
I don't know. It's like there's I'm able to dim out the world when I need to, and when I dim out the world, I'm able to pull up like a game menu, you know, like a HUD menu, like you know, like when you're in a video game and then like you dim the screen a little bit, and you can still see like the pause, like life happening behind it, but like, and I can certainly go back to that pause life, going back to it, but I don't need to, because I know that, you know, so I'm able to go into that realm where I'm able to use a little bit more time, extra time,
Yeah.
extra life, to be able to like dive deeper into a problem, because I'm able to see it like that. You know, I'm able to sort of pause time a little bit and find a way to fix it. But that's when things are, you know, really, really good. But then they call that manic, and then they give me manic. So it's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, you know, I don't. That's unhealthy, though. To be clear, is to be sustained at that level for me can lead to poor decision making, which kind of does. Like, I don't know. Is that part of the divergence to like need to like be naughty or something, like after I do a thing, or, you know, whatever you want to call it? Like,
I feel like I made a brilliant, like solved a brilliant solution, need to do something wild.
have a drink or something, you know, or something like.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, impulsive decisions are big in autism and in mania. And, you know, sometimes I wonder, you know, am I impulsive or do I just think really fast? And it's probably a combination of the two sometimes.
I think faster than I can talk and write.
Absolutely, me too.
And that hurts me, because sometimes it means that like by the time it gets to my fingers, like I've already thought beyond what I'm capable of, what I would need to write then. And so like I'm trying to find ways of I'm speed writing now by writing on paper. If I have to take notes while people are on a computer, like I can't type while and talk at the same time. It doesn't.
I love to take notes. I find that I'm a very efficient typer because I did transcribing research throughout college, through my master's. And so I built that skill over years, and I realized like, wow, like this is super hard, and it took like honing. And I realized like when I imagine a keyboard, if I'm thinking, I picture the keyboard in front of my face, and then I can keep talking. But I have so many errors. My B's are backwards. I use a D instead of a B, and I put the and of, and my dyslexia definitely takes charge. But I find that I really enjoy that sort of multi-processing.
I like the way you said that, like putting it up onto in front of you, like in your head, like that is you're actually giving me like I can actually start to see that. If I start to see it, then yeah, you build a muscle memory for it, but you do it here.
Yep, so in front of me, so I can see it even though I'm looking beyond my computer and thinking or listening, and I'm like trying to keep track of what I'm hearing. Okay, so go ahead.
And the key sometimes trying to, you know, even though I know them, like it's still.
Same.
I'm a coder.
Yeah, so lots of numbers. Does the number 4 have a color?
4 have a color. I mean, I saw a color when you said that. I saw a cross, like 4 red.
Okay, so like that. Okay.
Yeah, I saw just like the 4 parts of a not a cross, like
The like plus minus plus minus thing.
Yeah, like the one that looks like the Swiss flag.
X, Y. Yeah. Okay, so when you read silently, do you hear the words in your head?
Yes.
Do you have it? Okay, so when you're not reading, do you have an inner reading voice? Like, can you hear your own thoughts?
I hear my own thoughts. I believe I can hear my own thoughts. I mean, that's a good question. You know, think about it. Let me try to think for a second. No, I can't.
Right. My favorite. I love when I hear that. Like, let me think about that one.
I mean, I say words, you know.
Yeah.
So like I assume I hear them. That's a truth. I mean, I hear words. I do.
Is it in your voice?
Yes, it's my voice. No, but I mean, I think I might have said this before, but I respond to people. Like it might be my grandmother, or I might argue with her, maybe somebody else in the family, maybe not, maybe somebody else at work or whatever. And I work my way through those thoughts. So I imagine and or I argue to the thought of them in their voice.
Can you hear their voice in your head?
I can hear their voice in my head.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really amazing.
You know, I know that it's not a real person. And I know that I'm doing that as a means of creating an exercise for being able to work through whatever issue I need to work through with them. You know,
yeah, so you're reproducing the sound from memory.
Yeah, it's just memory. Yeah, from memorization, and then like I'll argue against it, and you know, and so I definitely hear it or remember the hearing of it.
You know, neurodivergents are like in the scientific literature, it says that we have an increase in gray matter neuroanatomy and white matter connectivity, which means we just have more connections, more, more communications, more connections. And so I think that being able to produce, these sounds in your head is because there are more connections. And I think that's a big part of being neurodivergent is nobody's connections are, again, going to overlap no matter how hard they try and put us in similar boxes, autistic boxes, schizophrenic boxes, OCD boxes, whatever. It's the connections in our brain that are so unique that it goes back to, again, making ourselves our own special interests.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's interesting. With brain, I guess we used to say wired differently. I think was a terminology that I remember hearing growing up, or I remember neurotic was another terminology.
Yes, honestly, I've always liked the word neurotic. I know that it has negative connotations, but all throughout history, neurotic, yes, is associated with mental illness, but it's associated with dream thinking. And honestly, I think that the way that we think seems so far out there, like on another planet, if you don't do it. But if you do it, it's just natural. And, autistics have been this historical topic debated in philosophy and classrooms and hospitals, schools. And, it'd be nice if we were more a part of the conversations, because I think we could shed a lot of light on maybe not why we think the way that we do, but how we think.
Certainly.
Yeah. No, you go ahead.
I would say, hopefully, we could do so without making it seem like we're evil. Like my daughter brought to my attention with the Autism Speaks campaign to make it seem like we are the dark force of overlord or whatever the hell it was. It was
I'm totally please don't heal me. Don't heal me. I like it over here.
But that to say, I think there was an interesting point that you made there about dreams, and I remember being obsessed with them when I was younger, and obsessed with the idea of lucid dreaming.
Yes.
I mean, obsessed. Like I read books on it and thought I was the next coming of Carlos Castaneda. I mean,
I legitimately have 7 copies of The Interpretation of Dreams by Freud. The amount of dream theory that I read is a special interest. I am so on the same page.
always try to look for my hands in my dreams as a result of all those things. And so if I find them, then I know I have my dream body and I can do whatever.
Cool. I have to in order to get lucid, because I'm always on a mission in my dreams. I'm trying to get to, I'm trying to figure out if I'm lucid or not. Am I in a dream? And, sometimes I can get there, sometimes I can't, but my dream world is like another place. It's like another reality that I exist in that has ups and downs and, exciting things, exhausting things, scary things, nightmares, stresses. So sometimes when I go to sleep, I don't feel like I get any rest, and I wake up and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's my other life again. I'm so tired.
You get rest.
Okay, so speaking of rest, it is 10 o'clock your time, and so I just want to thank you, Michael. This was honestly, it gives me so much to think about. Just in the last 40 minutes, I really feel like I have so much to think about from this conversation. And I thank you for being so candid and sharing so much about how you think and how you process. And, I really think it's inspiring how you talked about workplace accommodations, because I've had some trouble getting workplace accommodations in the past. And, it's honestly made me feel inspired, no, I deserve to ask for those, even if it's hard and I feel embarrassed. It goes back to being vulnerable. And so I really thank you for this vulnerable conversation.
Well, I appreciate having it. Yeah, I appreciate that you created the forum to have it, and continue to create the forum to create really incredible, interesting questions about the nature of things like synesthesia and what have you. That even my daughter was like, yes, I do see certain things. So I ask her questions sometimes, and she gives me back some interesting thoughts. So thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate it too, and I would love.
Can you tell me what the name of your? You said a name of a organization that you're representing, or is?
Yeah, so I work for the Connecticut Family Support Network, which is an organization that provides resources and supports to people over their lifetimes, either with disabilities or caring for people with disabilities. And so as an autistic woman, I thought it was important for Autism Awareness Month to sort of showcase all, different ways that autistics think, even, getting a diagnosis of autism and, declaring okay, I'm autistic doesn't mean that one person thinks the way another person thinks. And so I wanted to create a space where people could talk about how they think. And I hope that causes conversations, like you said, with your daughter, when we can increase conversations with people who love us, I think that we can, humanize other people and have them humanize us. And that's how we, get back to this sort of global community.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much again.
Yeah, Michael, thank you so much for taking your time. And I really appreciate it. And I will talk to you so soon. And I hope to have more of these conversations with you.
Most definitely. Take care.
Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.